First off, I just want to congratulate our basketball team, both women's and men's. Obviously, we're going to the Sweet 16 this Friday in New York with our men's and women's basketball playing this week against North Carolina. So, want to congratulate both programs. This is our eighth spring, believe it or not. I look back and that point in time and asked, how do we get to where we're at right now? And I think it's one of the reasons we've gotten to where we've gotten is because of the attitude we take every spring. I think this spring, the message to our players is pretty simple, really. I mean, it's handle success. Have to be able to handle success as we move forward in everything that we're doing. And there's no question that this year will be our greatest challenge in that area. Goals are the same. I look back and see what were our goals, in years past, and really it's the same. It's the same goals that my coach talked about every time we went to spring practice when I was in college at South Carolina. Get 3% better every spring practice. That starts with practice number 1. We have 15 practices, 15 opportunities to get 3% better, and obviously you're not going to make that big of increments throughout the whole spring practice, but you can certainly improve. You need to take that attitude as you move on. Find the best 11, the best 22. Put yourself in a situation where you're going to be playing on fall Saturdays, and this is the most important thing is finding those guys right now that's in our core makeup right now in the spring, and then allowing our freshmen to come in and finding out what they can do and putting them into playing situations as quick as possible. Recruit. I don't think there's any doubt that recruiting has become accelerated, so you need to be able to use this as a recruiting opportunity as well. It gives people an opportunity to come and watch you practice and get involved with their players. Establish our identity. Last year we needed to find a tailback, find our wide receivers, establish who we are. With that comes experiments. You need to establish your identity as a team, as a defense, as a secondary, as an offensive line, and then individually as well. I think that's important. Obviously, we need to stay healthy. We can't have any big injuries coming out of spring practice, so we're going to go live and do things as we have always done them, but at the same time, we need to try and stay as healthy as possible. Continue to develop a championship attitude. I think we're well along the way in that regard, but we have our mission. We need to continue to fulfill our mission, not just on the field, but off the field as well, and in the classroom. We want to work in different situations and cover all the situations you're going to see on a game day, special teams and offensively and defensively. And then finally, which I think is key as well, we want to play in front of an audience a little bit too, and that'll sort of end it with our spring game. And hopefully we'll have a big crowd this year. I would think that we'd have probably in excess of 50,000. That's what I would shoot for. But those are our goals. Fourth quarter's been outstanding. Great attitude. We've done most of our workouts in the morning at 5:30. That was by intent, really just to make it a little bit more difficult for our players. I think Coach Manning, our strength coaches, and our coaches have done an outstanding job in that area. We've got guys who are leaders, leading quite often. The guys that Shalik Calhoun, Travis Jackson, Drummond, Marcus Rush, Cook, Lippett, Mumfrey, Langford, Tawan Jones. Those are the guys that are really sticking out, but we've got a lot of guys that are working in winter workouts in our fourth quarter program at a championship level, so we'll need to continue that. But with that, I'll just take some questions and we can go from there.
Mark, two-part question. First, on your football team right now, what are you most confident in as far as a position, and what are you most concerned about?
I think as far as position, you got an MVP quarterback back in, not just one game, but in 2 games. So you've got to feel confident in our quarterback situation. I think we have 3 outstanding quarterbacks there, and one who has played at a very high level. Our wide receiver situation, I think, is secure. Offensive line, we have to retool a little bit. So I guess that would be a little bit of a concern area there. On the defensive side, I think our defensive ends are very solid, secure. We lose some defensive tackles, but we have some experience coming back at that position. So, but depth will be an issue. Our linebackers, again, I feel pretty secure in terms of the top 4 guys, and then we've got younger players coming in after that. So, whether it's Shane Jones or John Reschke, I would consider those guys younger players as well. But I feel pretty secure with, the top players. Our secondary, we'll retool it. You lose 2 guys like Isaiah Lewis and Daquez Denard. I don't know that those 2 guys are replaceable, but we've got some great players back there, and we've got depth. And I think we've got a lot of guys. We've developed good depth back there, and we've really never taken a step back yet. So I think our punter and our kicker are pretty solid. So I think we have a good nucleus back. Biggest concern, I guess, would be our depth at the inside tackles and how we're going to reconstruct our offensive line around some people.
Mark, you mentioned the idea of experimenting is this time of year something you want to do. Are there any particular guys you're experimenting with or positions you want to do with?
Yeah, I think the number 1 guy would be James Modanis. I think he's a good athlete. He's a big guy. He's got 1 year left. We'll move him to the offensive line. He really didn't start playing football until he came to college, so it's not like he's that far into it. But I think he has all the attributes to be an outstanding offensive lineman and quick learner. So that's one position that you're looking at. There's going to be other positions where you're going to work this guy from front side safety to the boundary safety and those type of things. R.J. Williamson and Demetrius Cox will sort of vie for that starting safety position. So that'll be a challenging situation for both those guys. Linebackers, I think everybody else is sort of set, pretty much. No real drastic changes. I don't see any drastic changes.
Mark, 2 quick questions. Delton Williams still at tailback. Do you look at him at linebacker this spring as well, or just keep him on offense?
No, he's gonna remain at tailback for us. He's gonna miss most of the spring probably with the shoulder surgery, but I think he's sort of solidified himself in the mix there.
Okay, and then last question: you lose Scarpinato and Dennis to retirement. Is everyone else back other than those 2?
Yes, and both those guys are graduating, and in terms of Mark Scarpinato, he's had an opportunity to go into med school. It's just an opportunity that's very, very difficult, and this is after his 3rd year in college, so he is graduating and going to do that. And then Mike Dennis is going into his 5th year. He's already graduated, so he's going to opt to move on as well. Both those guys are been very good players, solid players for us, and we'd want them both back. So this is a decision that they're making.
Mark, over here you mentioned the linebackers being pretty set. Taiwan Jones is listed as the middle linebacker after being outside for most of his career. Is that, you say set, is that something you're going to look at through the spring, or is that still a possibility moving back and forth, or is that your plan going forward that he's the guy there?
I think that's something that we're going to look at and evaluate as we move forward. He's become a thumper a little bit, and he's a big physical guy. We're going to have to see how he transitions in terms of the knowledge there, but again, they're all linebackers. He can play outside. He can play the Sam as well, and we're going to find out if he can play the Mike.
Mark, Jim Comparoni, SpartanMag.com. Joel Heath is a #1 defensive tackle right now. Can you talk about the winter that he's had and where he might be with his progress?
Yeah, good winter. He'll be slowed a little bit by an ankle early in the spring here, but I think he should be coming out of that within the first week. But, Joel's a big physical guy, 290 pounds, 6'6", a lot like Hoover in a lot of ways. I think he's just earned the opportunity to go in there and work for the starting position. LT will play inside and outside, and he should be a force as well. And I think we have good players on the defensive front, and those guys can play in it, either place, and they did last year. So we're just going to work that situation right now as such, but I think both guys could play either or, which is a positive.
Coach, last year we saw you do some different things with the tight ends, even though they were a younger group. Can you talk about where your tight ends are now and if you expect Gleichert to take a big step? I know he had that wrist that kind of lingered for a while.
Yeah, I think our tight ends are in a much more secure position this year. Certainly Gleichert comes back, but really Josiah Price, Jamal Lyles are two additional guys I think that will. You could basically call them all starters as far as I'm concerned. They're pretty mixed type guys, and you got Matt Sokol who work in there. Chimura will be back, and he may work at a tight end as well as an F, so he can be an either-or guy. And he's proved to be a good player based on scout team. He's coming off of surgery, but he'll be practicing as well. So I think we have 5 guys. I think we're in a much better situation than we were last year at this time at the tight end position.
You've named a few people that are out. Can you tell us anyone else, Mark, that's out for spring? And then secondly, with LT, he's been given chances at several different positions. Being a junior, is it time for him to get somewhere and settle?
Well, we've used LT at fullback position in the past. We just wanted to get him on the field, and that will always be our goal, to get our players on the field. And usually what I've said is use them or lose them. So he can play. I would say he's the 4th or the 5th defensive lineman right now. It just depends on where he's going, how he's playing, and can he stay healthy and those type of things. And I think the biggest thing is he's got to remain healthy. He had a back last spring that really kept him out the entire spring. He had a back brace on throughout the entire summer, and really couldn't get back involved so he missed all of August camp, and he missed pretty much most of September. So he was a guy that I think that happened. I think that might have happened in the summer, but he missed a lot of time, and there was some thoughts about whether it was fractured or not. So he missed a lot of August camp and the fundamental aspects of it. So he came into, when he finally did get back in the fall, he was behind the 8 ball in terms of what he was doing, fundamentally. But he's a good football player. He's athletic. He's 290 pounds. He's got strength. He can run. He's active. So got to find a place for him to play. But I would agree with you. It's his time. Other injuries, Ed Davis in and out a little bit. Will be out for the first couple of weeks, probably, maybe 3 weeks, and will probably never go live throughout. Good player. I think we've got some other guys just sort of hindered a little bit more with hamstrings and things of that nature. And I don't have my ultimate list right in front of me right now. But secondary is pretty squared up. Defensive line, pretty squared up. The one linebacker. Wide receivers, all right. Offensive line seems to be all right. I know I'm missing somebody, and then Delton Williams probably will be much the same like Ed. Probably will be able to do some things, but not go live throughout the spring. I know I'm missing somebody else, but that's where we're at. Oh, Mike Sadler won't punt.
Mark, with Jamal Lyles, then, is he offense all the way moving forward from here?
Never say never, Joe. I mean, you never say never. He's a good athlete. He's 260 pounds. He can run. So just to, we need to see him playing. He needs to be playing more than he needs to be playing an active part in our offense. So I would expect for him to be getting a lot more plays, but you just never say never. I just believe he's a football player. He's active. He has defensive mentality. He has defensive snaps. He has played in games on defense, and he's spent a year plus on the defensive side of the ball. So I do think he can be an excellent tight end. He catches the ball very, very well, but we need to see him playing. He needs to be playing. That's my opinion.
And then a guy like Kittredge, how much more can he do? Obviously, he had a good year a couple years ago. I mean, it seems like with that depth inside, he would be needed right now to step up a little bit.
Yeah, James is another guy that was hurt and was out for quite a while last fall. We missed him in the summer camp, and so he was a guy that was in and out a little bit, didn't play as much as he had played the year before. So he's got his weight back. He again, I can't remember all the injuries, but he lost a lot of weight. He was really down in weight. He got sick. So he was weighing 260, 265. He had two hernias. That's what it was. He had one on one side and another one. So it was a struggle for him to get back. But now he's back up to 290 pounds plus. He should be active.
Mark, excuse me. What is the secret for championship programs to stay hungry, which is something you've been able to trade off for all these years? Is there a common thread there that everybody that wins at a high level has?
I think, the difference between winning and losing, as I've said many, many times, is very, very small. You had two teams of this conference. It's a 14-team conference now. We'll be in the East, so 7 teams in the East, good football teams, very well coached throughout this conference. We have a great schedule that we'll play. So every team, I think, needs to come in, or every team, when I say every team, I mean every Michigan State team that we've had, has to come in and earn their identity. And they have to understand that it's not going to be given to them. We need to understand where we came from, never forget that, and take one step at a time to elevate our play. Establish our leadership, establish who we are again, and sort of do it the old-fashioned way, and that's what we've done here. We can't feel like we're entitled and feel like, that if the press is saying, hey, you're a number 5 team in the country, we can't just hang our hat and say, okay, that's going to happen. You have to make it happen. And we have to be mature enough to be able to handle success, and that's a part of it. That's why I keep just talking about what have we done every game, how we've gone about it. We had a very business-like approach last year, and I think that's a credit to how our team did what they did, but more importantly, how our senior leadership handled things. Because you can slip back real quick. From what I've seen written out there, we had a dismal 7-6 year the year before. So it's gone from being 7-6 to dismal. Okay, so you can slip back real quickly, but the fact remains is that we'll get what we earn.
You mentioned, this has been a few springs for you now. Is this the best team and the best roster that you've had going into a spring since you got here, Mark? I mean, competition really at every position, even your quarterback.
I really haven't looked at that aspect of it. Probably need to look at it as we begin to practice. We lost a lot of very good players. I went down, I looked at our team picture today, and lost some very good players. Max Bulla, Daquez Denard, Isaiah Lewis, and Blake Treadwell, and on it goes. So, Danico Sallin, I don't want to leave anybody out. Okay, but I think we have makings of a good football team, but again, I think we need to understand that we'll go where our players take us, and to me, much of that is based on chemistry and leadership. So, last year we had a chip on our shoulder. It's important that chip remain on our shoulder as we move through things.
Coach Dantonio, speaking of that, how do you keep your players focused going into this new season, or are they already focused and they want a taste a little bit more of success or what you guys can accomplish?
I think your players always look to try and take another step further. So I think they're motivated in that way, but I think they also understand. Many of our players were here in 2012. They were here in obviously in 13 as well. When you look at the number of players that have been here all of our players have been here since 2010. So they basically are 42 and 10 over the last 4 years, which is a big positive for us, and we need to build on that. But at the same time, they need to be able to look back at 2012 and be able to realize that, things are won or lost like that. I hope all the players understand that. There's no substitution for hard work. We work them hard, and we keep pushing them. That's all I can tell you. But I know that everybody in this conference does the same. It's just the nature of it.
Mark, in the offensive line last year, obviously rotated a bunch of guys. Is that something that begins to be a strength for you guys this year because you don't have to go with a bunch of inexperienced guys? And is it still kind of an approach you're going to keep taking, or was it just unique last year?
I think it was unique, and it was a luxury. And I think if we play ourselves to that situation, that's outstanding for us. I think our thoughts are that those players, all those players that played, and I think 8 of them played, warranted that playing time. It wasn't given to them, but they warranted that based on their play. We lose really 3 guys, and Mike Dennis was a guy that could have swung in there and been a ninth offensive lineman that would have played some, but played at tight end for us. But we're going to lose some of those guys, and it's going to be important that younger players make that move. I think Cody Keeler is a guy that has had an outstanding fourth quarter program, which is what we call our winter conditioning, and I think he's sort of set to play a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of spring he has. So it'll be exciting to watch him.
Got time for 1 or 2 more for Coach?
Coach, I know you said the team needs to keep the chip on their shoulder. What do you do as the head coach to keep the chip there? Because you've said it is human nature to feel pretty good about yourselves after a season like you just had.
Well, I think those things take care of themselves, whether it's how you handle your winter conditioning, your fourth quarter program. Do you let them slide through it, or you hold them accountable in each drill that they're going through? Or do you repeat the drill? How do you handle their maturity in terms of being off the field? What kind of, if you have a problem, how do you address it? Those things I think are important as well. And then just how do you act? How do you walk around? And when you've won, there's an added responsibility that goes along with that in terms of how you carry yourself. And I hope we're carrying ourselves with humility out there. I hope that we're doing that. That goes a long ways towards pointing the direction for me. But I think the statistics are, I've said this before in here, I think 1 out of every 10 teams that has had great success has an opportunity to, there's a 10% chance of that team doing it again. So 1 out of every 10. So we need to be that 1 in 10 that's able to handle that. So I think a lot of it, though, our seniors have to have their best years. Every time we've had a great season, if you go back in 08, if you look at 10, if you look at 11, if you look at 13, our seniors have stepped up and had their greatest year. Not just on the field, but off the field as well. And, usually those things go hand in hand. When we've had those years, we've had very few problems off the field. And, we've just been able to move the rock, as I've said.